Now, welcome to another edition of Battle of the Heroes and Villains, where this time we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll for Savage Opress, comparing them to all the other characters we've done thus far, before I then read and respond to some of your comments. But before we get to all that, you can already head down and nominate and or vote for which character we do next by responding to my pinned comment below with a character name, or giving a thumbs up if the one you'd like to see is already listed. Whatever single comment gets the most votes in the next 24 hours or so will be the winner and the character we do next. Alright, and now on to the results for Savage Opress, where we'll see that 11% of people gave him an A, 54% of people then thought he was a B tier character, 30% of people gave him a C, which left 3% to give him a D, and a final 2% to give him an F. And so when we do all the math and consider A a score of 5 and F a score 1, Savage ends up with an average score of 3.69, which puts him into 36th place overall. And just ahead of Sabine Wren, which I find maybe a little surprising. I thought Savage might finish just a little bit lower than he did. So let's then get to the comments and see what everyone had to say about him, why he finished where he did. But not before I once again quickly say thank you to everyone who votes, comments, and watches these videos. It is all greatly appreciated. And now we'll start, as we always do, with the top rated comment, which this time came to us from J Danger Boy, who said, "Brother, I am an unworthy apprentice. I'm not like you. I never was." That line alone still gives me the chills and made me care about Savage. And yeah, I think the death of Savage and his final words to Maul is one of the best and maybe saddest moments in the whole Clone Wars series. It does give you chills, but unfortunately though, for Savage, I don't think it's as much because he's dying as it is because Maul is losing him, which is going to bring us to a bunch of comments, starting with this one from Julia A, who said, "Savage always felt like he served his purpose in the plot well. One of the main ways he did this was to show a different side of Maul, contrary to what we had seen thus far. I wouldn't rank him with Anakin or Maul or any A or S tier characters, but I think a B is a fair rating for him." There was then also this comment from Joe and Amy Mallory, who said, "I feel that the main point of his character was to bring out the best in Maul, and he did that perfectly. I liked how he cared more about his brother than being on top. He shows that villains aren't always selfish. B+ for me." We also have this one from Donald, who says, "An interesting character at first that instantly plays second fiddle as soon as you realize that they're bringing back Maul. Seriously, how do you top or even match the presence of Maul and the performance of Sam Witwer?" Then there's this comment from Crossfire34, who said, "He died too quickly to leave much of an impression. It was a decent impression, but nothing past a C for me." We also got this comment from Damien Harbin, who said, "Savage showed a lot of growth from his introduction up until Maul's resurgence. After that, his progression slowed. Solid character, but overshadowed by a much more interesting character." Then this one from MTS1993, who said, "He's a plot device who looks cool and ultimately serves his purpose of advancing Maul's return and character arc in the Clone Wars. Once Maul was re-established, his purpose was served and fate sealed." And yeah, I certainly do think that obviously Savage was very much meant to serve a purpose, that the story is not so much about him. He's mainly in there to ultimately add to or enhance the story of Maul, a character who, back before The Phantom Menace came out, a lot of people, a lot of fans, myself included, had big hopes for. We really thought he would be the next great villain of Star Wars. And though since then he has absolutely become one of the best characters in all of Star Wars, back in The Phantom Menace he had a very limited, albeit cool, amount of screen time, and he had like 2 lines, and he really was just in there to serve a purpose himself, and that being to kill Qui-Gon and get us to a point where Obi-Wan is now going to train Anakin, and is going to set in motion this tragic chain of events. Maul is really just there to play his part in the duel of the fates, in the fate of the galaxy, in the fate of Anakin's future, and he ends up being killed off after that purpose is served. And so, a bit ironically perhaps, in an effort to salvage this character that everyone had such high hopes for, to salvage Maul, another character is created to sort of usher him back into the story and give him a deeper story, a character that by himself is also interesting. Don't get me wrong, I think Savage has a cool design and backstory and introduction, and I think a lot of people really liked him right out of the gate and wanted to see him developed further. But then, as many pointed out in their comments, once Maul is sort of back and re-established, Savage is killed off before reaching his full potential, or before they did all they probably could have done with him. And all of this is done to add to the overall tragedy of Maul, and his death, Savage's death, does do that beautifully. Again, his death and final words to Maul are haunting. They have to sting and stay with Maul for the rest of his life, no doubt about it. Even despite all that, though, despite maybe a bit of a premature death, I do think Savage was a good character in his own right in his limited time, especially what was done with him before he finds Maul and becomes his apprentice. All of that early stuff with him I thought was great, and I wish we would have seen a little more done with him after he's with Maul, because he basically kind of becomes Maul's brute enforcer brother. He does get lost in the shadow of Maul for the rest of his time on screen before he dies. And don't get me wrong here, not every character in a story has to be fully fleshed out. Some can be there just to serve the story or to serve another character's story, even though with Star Wars, for whatever reason, pretty much every single character that makes it on screen eventually gets a story told somewhere about them. But anyway, in the case of Savage, I do think a little bit more could have been done with him, again, mainly after he finds Maul. We could have used a few more personal interactions between the two brothers to really make that eventual death hurt even more. Alright, and moving on now, we have this comment from Alec Paiva, who said, "Would have been nice to explore a Maul apprentice dark-side duo during Dooku and Sidious a lot more. Shame we never got to see Dooku and Sidious really fight together, since Maul and Savage would have made fine opponents." Then there's also this one from Connor Ryan, who said, "Savage is tragic and a badass. You kinda can't help but feel sorry for the guy, ripped away from his home, mutated into a monster, programmed to be a killer, poorly trained, abandoned, and left for dead. He's kind of like Star Wars' Frankenstein monster." Then for a time he actually finds some peace with his brother. This bond between them is a relationship between Sith that we never see anywhere else. Savage gets fights and moments of badassery before tragedy strikes again and he's given a genuinely sad death. Great character, A. We also got this comment from Centaur255, who said, "I loved how we got to see the process of a Sith apprentice being selected, as well as the lore and background we got on the Night Sisters of Dathomir. The character had a simple arc, but a good one for what it was designed to do. Deepen the stories of Maul, Dooku, and to some extent Sidious. I give him a B." Then there's this comment from Elias Hardy, who said, "The training scenes with him and Dooku are dark and brutal, and I love that." And I do think one of the coolest aspects of Savage's story is getting at least a glimpse at how the dark side works, or how darksiders generally train and treat their apprentices, which is basically like tools or trying to hone a weapon. And it's so vastly different from how the Jedi do it with their master and Padawan relationship, where the point of a Jedi taking on an apprentice is to hopefully have a student that will one day surpass them, to be greater than they were. Whereas with the dark side, it's all about, again, creating a tool or a weapon to be used for their own benefit, but not one so strong that it'll be able to turn on them and take them out, which goes right back to the fundamental difference between Jedi and Sith, the selfless versus the selfish. Everything or everybody a Sith looks at, they try to figure out how can they use this person or this thing to their advantage. What purpose can it serve them? While the Jedi looks at everything and tries to see if there's anything they can do to help, any purpose they can serve it or them. And so yeah, I know it's kind of tragic and sad, but I really like that Savage basically gets used by all these different Darksiders at first to really show what they're all about, until he comes to Maul, who is no doubt sort of torn. He sees him as both a brother and yet as an apprentice and this tool to be used all at the same time. And again, I think it would have been cool to see that explored even more, to expand on this unique dynamic between them. And it really only would have taken maybe one more episode of these two together trying to overcome something and to really focus on these two, to just hammer home that relationship and then to make Savage's death even more impactful when it happens. Alright, and next up here we have this comment from Charlie Maloney, who said, "I just love that moment where Maul has a clear shot to Obi-Wan's side, but chooses to instead block the strike coming for Savage. Such a small moment, but it goes to show that the brothers really did care for each other." And yes, it does maybe seem like a small thing in the moment, something you might easily overlook or not think too much about, but Maul did have an easy chance to finish off and kill Kenobi, to basically stab him from behind, but it maybe probably would have cost him his brother, and rather instinctually it seems like it was more of a gut reaction than anything he really thought about. He saves his brother instead of getting his vengeance on Kenobi, which goes to show he does care about his brother. However, imagine what if his hatred for Kenobi had won out in that moment and Kenobi had been killed. Imagine how that changes absolutely everything that comes next. Not only is Maul no longer consumed with hunting Kenobi for the rest of his life since he's dead now, but how does Anakin handle Kenobi being killed by Maul? What does that do to him? Does he now go hunting down Maul and fall to the dark side sooner or faster? And what happens after he falls? There's not going to be an Obi-Wan Kenobi there to challenge him, defeat him, and put him in the suit this time. But anyway, I always do love exploring how one decision in the moment can sometimes have huge ramifications down the road. And Star Wars has always been really good about including these moments where characters have these massive decisions where we know the fate of pretty much all things hangs in the balance, like Anakin choosing to save Palpatine and betraying Windu, or Luke deciding to let himself fall to what easily could have and should have been his death over taking Vader's hand in The Empire Strikes Back. But there are also these smaller moments embedded in there that, when you really stop and think about it, have just as huge of ramifications. Alright, and now time for just a few final comments, starting with this one from Abraham Levin, who said, "The dark side took a proud, powerful man, gave him a vision of greater status, and turned him to a weak, dying husk." Then there's this one from David Lynn Jr., who said, "He did last longer against Sidious than some of the Jedi Council members." And then this one from Felix, who said, "Savage was actually my favorite character in Clone Wars for a while. His death was unexpected, sudden, and dark. I love it." We also have this comment from Hardly Common, who said, "Where Maul is finesse, Savage is brute force. He mostly served as a bridge to bring Maul back into the story, but he's the type of villain that makes you wonder if the hero is going to make it out alive. He's unpredictable both in his fighting style and his actions within the story, and a fun B-tier character for me." Then there's this one from Hunter's Lego Room, who said, "When I watched Clone Wars as a kid, I thought he was scary. It was what ushered me into the serious side of the show. I love his character so much, and I wish he got some more. A for me." Also got a comment here from Jumper40, who said, "One of the few characters I didn't like in the Clone Wars. In the beginning, he is so weirdly overpowered, and then he loses to Palpatine in a matter of seconds. Besides that, he also didn't work well as a character, and he becomes a cheap version of Darth Maul. Unnecessary D." Next up then, this comment from M. Lupa Noir, who said, "D. He is just there. Dooku's tool, Maul's tool, and more importantly, plot tool. Not complaining." Then this comment from Menlet Gundir, who said, "Clancy Brown's voice just carries so much menace and rage with Savage. It's perfect." And finally here, this comment from Olivia Piriano, who said, "He had a lot of potential, but he was brought into the show too late and taken out too early to really have time to reach that potential." Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think of Savage Opress, or what I or anyone else had to say about him here in this video. You can also feel free to nominate and or vote for which character we do next by responding to my pinned comment. Either way, do leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.